Call this meeting of the Laramie City Council to order. It's the meeting for October 4th, 2022. If you'd like to, you can join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, however you see fit. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
the United,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk, may I have a roll call for council members present?
Cumby,
Here.
Gabriel,
Here.
Harrington,
here,
O'Doherty,
Here.
Schmeckel,
Here.
Schuster,
Here.
Somerville,
Here.
Pierce,
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
That's 9 present and 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Next up, we have public comment on non-agenda items. If the items to come before the council tonight, we'd ask you to reserve your comments for that time. This is for non-agenda items.
Mayor,
Seeing none. City Clerk.
just a quick reminder to folks that are watching that the raise hand feature is at the bottom of your screen.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. We'll give folks a second to process that advice to see if anybody was waiting. Doesn't look like. Okay, so we will now go to consideration of changes in the agenda, and I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the following 3 changes to the agenda be approved. Our first change is item 9J. It's a license, temporary use of a Laramie County retail liquor license for Delancey Enterprise to be used on October 13th. Item 9K is also a license, a temporary use of an Albany County retail liquor license to be used on October 17th, 2022. And our last change is item 9IC. Our October 11th work session has been canceled.
Second.
It's a motion and a second from Councilmember Somerville. All those in favor indicate by raising your hand or saying aye or both.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I move that the agenda be set as changed.
Second from Councilmember Schuster. Motion from the Vice Mayor. All those in favor, same sign.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Got a proclamation up next. Thank you, Vice Mayor, by the way. Got a proclamation up next, and it's for Community Planning Month. It's my pleasure to read this proclamation in recognition of Community Planning Month. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlements and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of Laramie, Wyoming. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional, community, and regional planners of Laramie, Wyoming. and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Paul Weaver, Mayor and President of the governing body of the City of Laramie, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2022 Community Planning Month in the City of Laramie, Wyoming, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. I'd like to turn it over to our planner for the City of Laramie, who does a good job, does a lot of hard work, and is with us just about every Tuesday. Mr. Teeny, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'll be brief. As it noted in the proclamation, October is Planning Month. Throughout this month, we're going to be posting a few things just each week, a little bit about planning that's going on in our community and just planning resources that are available just for the public to see. Each year I feel like I kind of get up and I say the same thing, but I think it's important to note that, our community supports planning. And I think that that's a really important thing for the longevity of our community. What we find is communities that are successful in making plans and realizing their vision are communities that are places where people want to live and grow old in and raise families and start businesses and do all the things that we want in a great town. And so, for us in Laramie, we have a council that supports planning. We have staff that supports planning. And you also have a great planning commission that helps provide recommendations to you on many different things related to planning. And so I think emphasizing that importance, I think is a good thing. And I would just say thank you to the council and our planning commissioners, as well as any other volunteers that kind of aid us in all those efforts that happen all across the city, even outside of these formal planning situations that we deal with that just make our community great. So thank you, Mayor and Council, and that's all I've got to say.
Mr. Cheney, thank you very much. I want to join you in thanking our Planning Commission members, both present and past. There have been many who have served a great deal of time on that board and then moved on and created space for new members to come in. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you related to this proclamation, just kind of public information purposes. The idea of community planning, how long has that been something that's been incorporated in modern city government at this point in time, as we recognize it this month? I know it's been a while.
I mean, I guess depends. I mean, the Romans were probably the most modern civilization putting up real planning, but I mean, planning has been around for a long time, and it just took a different form throughout the years, and I think, the planning that you're familiar with today in the United States is definitely kind of the modern age of planning, but it was definitely born in Europe and made its way across the waters of the Pacific there, and now is here, and we're or the Atlantic, and we're here now, doing those things like zoning and making sure that our cities are safe, and that's it's been a long history. It's just not always been called planning. It just hasn't been thought of as like a profession. So
let's restrict ourselves to thinking about it as planning in the United States of America. I think it's certainly not limited to the 20th century, but I think it's probably come into its own. And when I say 20th century, I mean, I think we're talking about the very early days of that century, where associations such as the one that we're recognizing and you belong to came into existence. Well over 100 years old at this point, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mr.
for sure.
I think that's always good to talk about these things. It wasn't 1975 when we said, let's start having planning and let's start celebrating Planning Day. And I'm going to just say that's a good thing, because I think without planning, people would be unhappy to wake up in the community that they might face without the institution of planning. So I think this is a good proclamation, Mr. Cheney. You mentioned maybe saying the same thing every year. Consistency isn't a bad thing. I think we in the city of Laramie and in cities across the United States reap the benefits of planning every day and every month and every year. And that consistency is a good thing. And that's one of the things that we strive for, in having some design and some idea about growth in our communities. So no worries on that reminder on an annual basis. I think it's a good thing. City Manager, I think the next thing that we have on the agenda was announcements. Did you want to give a brief announcement regarding the issue of the school that you talked to us just briefly about in the pre-meeting? I think we'd like to hear that. So over to you.
Yes, Mayor, I'd be happy to. We have had a number of concerned citizens call with respect to signage for the school zone surrounding Slade School. The Public Works Director informed me this morning that the city has approved the school zone plan from the school district and that the signage and beacons for the crosswalks have been ordered by the district, but may take a few weeks to arrive as we understand it. So Public Works through Brooks Webb will be working to see if we can get up some temporary signage around Slade School to demarcate that school zone area until we get the permanent installations completed, probably, I'm guessing, within a month or so. Thank
you very much, City Manager. You know, it occurs to me as you give us that announcement now, if you know, the Slade School has certainly suffered some setbacks from delays, I think, over the course of its construction, and we really appreciate the problems that that's created for the school district and that school in particular. And this is just another one of those. And you know, we want to try to support them as best we can. And it does occur to me, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you this earlier when you were talking to us about it in the pre-meeting, City Manager, but I'd like to ask you now, is there something that the city might be able to do in that interim period while we're waiting for some of those things to get set up, in terms of additional traffic assistance we might be able to provide during those peak times? Is that something you can look into for us while we're waiting for that signage to come up?
I'd be happy to visit with our acting chief and see if maybe there is available patrol to be out there. So I'll follow up on that, Mayor.
Is that a reasonable request to make at this point in time? It's just something.
Yeah. And LPD often does that kind of enhanced patrol, particularly in the beginning of the school year when people are becoming accustomed again to, you know, slowing down through those school zones. So it's not atypical.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and appreciate the update on that. And once again, you know, we do understand the difficulty that the school district is facing too with delays. We understand it well because we're struggling with the same issues with regard to equipment and things of that nature. Okay, next is item number 7, and I'd like to ask the council if there's any disclosures on any of the items coming before the council on the agenda tonight that they'd like to make with respect to those items. Seeing none, we'll move on, and that'll be to item number 8, which I'll turn over to the Vice Mayor for approval of the consent agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
A motion, a very close second by Council Member Harrington. And we'll go to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
yes,
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes,
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
and that motion carries. Thank you, Council. Thank you, City Clerk. Consent agenda has been approved, which will take us into our regular agenda, opening with item number 10 and going immediately to item number 11, which I'll turn over to Council Member Schuster for introduction.
Thank you very much. The title is Award of Bid 8 All-Wheel Drive 4-Door Hybrid SUV Police Package Patrol Car Vehicles with Trade-in. I move to award the bid for the 8 all-wheel drive 4-door hybrid SUV Police Package Patrol Vehicles with trade-in to Ken Garth Ford, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and the total amount of $344,844, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion and the second from the Vice Mayor. Thank you both. Mr. Webb, welcome back for the background.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council. As you recall, this year we're bidding 2 years worth of vehicles. That's why there's 8 of them. Normally we wouldn't be bidding 8 police vehicles, but due to the delay in delivery, we decided to take the 2 years worth of vehicles into the first year. The delivery time on these is 365 days. So most of everything we're seeing right now is at least a year on delivery. We went out to bid on the vehicles through our normal process. We received 2 bidders. Ken Garth Ford was the low bidder. These are the hybrid police interceptors. We currently have 5 of these on patrol right now, and police department's loving them. You may recall from last time, I kind of went through the calculator on Ford's website and showed you some of the savings that you see there as far as fuel. For these vehicles, per vehicle, the estimate is we're saving about 1,200 gallons of fuel per year per vehicle. That's on average around $3,500 savings per year on gasoline, and about 25,000 pounds of CO2 output reduced per year per vehicle. So this is for 8 vehicles. Originally in the budget, there was 7 vehicles. The 8th one got added as it was involved in an accident and totaled out. And so that's why there's only 7 trades instead of 8 trades. Anyway, with that, I'll take any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Mr. Webb on the, yes, Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor. Brooks, we had talked in the past, and maybe this was with former Chief Stalder, but about how the PD was utilizing sort of the car itself as a mobile office and needed that access to battery power all the time. That's why you often see the police cruisers sitting idling. Does the hybrid provide any options for that sort of battery power to support their computer and things of that sort while it is off or not burning? I guess the important part would be not burning gasoline.
Yeah, Councilor Harrington, through you, Mayor. The way these are set up is that as they're idling or sitting, if the battery draws too low, then the vehicle will automatically turn the engine on to charge the battery back up. And then once it gets sufficient charge, then the engine itself shuts back off. So it regulates itself. And these interceptors that Ford makes is specifically for police use. Like I couldn't just go buy one. They're specifically for police use and take all that into consideration. And they've been working great.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Webb? Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just have a comment. I just want to point out that one of the advantages is that, as you mentioned, police vehicles have to idle for a long time, and the idling takes about a half to a gallon per hour. So I'm really happy that we'll be able to see these savings. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Webb, for pulling it all together.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Webb? Mr. Webb, you know, the council is always eager to hear these updates and get your background on them and have those questions answered. And the news continues to be good. I'm glad this equipment is working out for our city staff across departments, and it seems to be a piece of the city policy goal that's going well. And it's always just good news to hear. See if there's public comment. Seeing none, we'll go to item number 13, Councilmember Harrington.
We have order, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor.
sorry. Item number 12, Councilmember Harrington.
Mayor,
Yes.
if we could do a roll call vote.
Oh, you people.
I know, right?
Of course, let's have a roll call vote on this item.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, City Clerk and Council, for your vote on that and for helping me to stay on track with the agenda. We'd now like to go to item number 12, and I'll turn that over to Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to award the bid for Household Hazardous Waste Building Project to Archon Inc., Laramie, Wyoming, in the amount of $1,447,518, along with a contingency of $144,750 for a total amount not to exceed $1,592,268. Amend the budget as appropriate and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
The motion and a second from Councilmember Schmeckel, and we'll go back to Mr. Webb.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, the Household Hazardous Waste Project has been kind of in the works for a while. We awarded the design contract, or you awarded the design contract just about 2 years ago. We were scheduled to bid the project last summer. However, because of the material shortages for the steel building, contractors told us don't do it because it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So we held off for a year. We heard that things are better in the steel building industry. And so we were happy to get the 3 bids for the building. So this building includes a large area for household hazardous waste drop off and storage, where our staff can be in a temperature controlled room, which they don't have out there right now, and pack the materials and prepare it for shipment. It also includes a tempered bay that we can park a water truck in, and then a tempered bay for mechanics so that they can work on the equipment out there. Currently, we don't have any of those areas. Our mechanics, if they have to do work out there in the middle of winter on something, it's miserable, as you can imagine. So this is really going to help with our efficiencies and our safety for staff, and help with really public service with the household hazardous waste building and drop off area. Our current facility right now has no utilities at all, no electricity, nothing. And it's literally a mile away from the front gate. So our staff is driving materials back and forth across the site. So we're really excited about this project. We went out to bid. We received 3 bids, which was great. You see our low bidder is a local contractor, Archon Incorporated. We had 2 bid alternates on the project. One is for a loading dock. It's a dock that we load the single stream recycling after it gets baled, is loaded into the back of basically an 18-wheeler trailer. And that dock is in kind of poor condition. So bid alternate 1, we're recommending accepting so that we can get that built back right. And then our bid alternate 2 was for a solar array. And unfortunately, we are not recommending approval of that right now because the cost that came in for that is about 3 times what we've been seeing on our other solar projects. I'm not sure why that all of a sudden went through the roof, but the design is there, so we can always come back later and put that in when those costs for the solar stuff comes back down, or we can look at the I can't remember the name of the grant now. You guys know which one I'm talking about. the grant for the Rocky Mountain Power. Anyway, we can look at that too, but we have the design in place. So if we need to go back out for that in the future, we can when those prices come back down. And with that, I'll take any questions if you have them.
Questions? Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brooks, I'm not sure if this would be a traditional thing for staff to do, but I would be interested in seeing if that increase in price is specific to like a point in time, or if, when this building is complete, if we open up that section again for bid and see if the price has changed, to maybe get a clearer picture if this is going to be an ongoing price issue, or if it really is just that everybody was putting in solar arrays right now.
Yeah, Counselor Harrington, through you, Mayor, we're definitely investigating. It didn't really make sense to us. So we're looking at it now. GH Phipps, who did the contract here at the Municipal Operations Center. You know, the cost we did for the solar array here was great. But like I said, the pricing is about 3 times that. So we're definitely going to look into it, see what's going on there. And it's Blue Sky Grant. I just remembered Blue Sky.
Thank you. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. I was wondering, what's the most common hazardous waste out there? Is it paint? Is it something like that, or is it something completely different?
Yeah, Counselor Schuster, through you, Mayor, it's definitely paint. I mean, we get lots and lots of paint, depending on the time of year, pesticides, herbicides, things like that. Every now and then we get some strange stuff with the university in town. You know, sometimes we'll get some lab waste that we really usually won't accept because it's not necessarily household. It's usually, you know, from a lab or a professor or something. But yes, the most common is absolutely paint.
Any other questions?
Follow up, Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
Really excited about the solar possibility. Finance Committee approved right to check for the rest of the solar panels on the number 3 fire station tonight. So really excited about that. So that's taken care of. Because that was a 50-50 grant from Blue Sky.
Other questions? Comments? We'll go to public comment. Seeing none, we'll go to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes,
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
thank you. That motion carries. We'll go to item number 13. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve amendment number 2 to the professional services agreement with GSG Architecture for construction services on the household hazardous waste building project in the amount of $52,650 and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Harrington. Mr. Webb, for the 3rd time is a charm.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, GSG Architecture is the firm that designed the household hazardous waste building.
Mr. Webb, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm gonna go to the city clerk because she's asking for my attention. I do apologize.
Sorry about that, Mayor. Never mind. That does solve my problem. We could hear background conversation. No, thank you, Mayor.
Yep. Council members are asked to stay in order during the meeting. Mr. Webb.
No problem. Honorable Mayor, GSG Architecture is the firm that designed the household hazardous waste project that you just awarded. Is what we're asking here for now is as usual to award them an amendment for construction management administration services on the project.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from Mr. Webb on this item? We've heard a little bit about this prior, council members. Why don't we see if there's public comment on the item? Seeing none, council, back to you for questions or comments. City clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes,
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
and that motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. That takes us to item number 14. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move to approve original ordinance number 2051, amending multiple sections within Title 15 of the Laramie Municipal Code for the purposes of updating definitions, uses, dimensions, and city code as a standard practice as recommended by the Planning Commission on first reading in accordance with findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Second.
It's a motion and a second by Councilmember Cumby. Would like to welcome Mr. Shahidi from our Planning Department for the background.
Honorable Mayor, Council. Today I have before you some changes to Title 15 of the Laramie Municipal Code. Throughout the year, we go through the code, and as we're working with either patrons or on specific projects, we start to notice that there's some things that just aren't lining up, whether it's because of changes that have been made to the code in the past that just haven't precipitated down throughout the rest of the code, or because it just was missed for one reason or another. And so today I have mostly clerical changes. So they're not big. They're making sure that references to other sections are correct. But then also there are some that are slightly more substantive. And so we'll go through those quickly so that you all can understand what those changes are. And so I'm looking through the staff report that went to Planning Commission, and the first one I'd like to go over is number 2, proposed change 2. It's on page 2 if you're following along. And what that does is for most projects, you have to put up a posted notice on site so that neighbors and interested parties understand that there is a change, whether it's a preliminary plat or a variance. They can understand that something is happening on that site. Up until recently, it wasn't exactly clear how long those signs needed to be visible. And so we decided to make it a little bit more clear why that's there. And so it was somewhat intuitive for us. It was 15 days prior, but we wanted to make sure that it was clearer to people who need to put that sign up on their property. The next one is change number 6. That's on page 5. If you look through the code, earlier in the year, you guys did some text amendments that changed setback requirements. And during that time, we did not change the footnote. If you look in like the R2 district, the R2M, and the R3 districts, the footnote on there would have essentially made it so that there would have been a 0 lot line setback. Looking back through our previous conversations about this and the approval that went through, it wasn't our we didn't believe that it was the intent of either Planning Commission or Council to actually have a 0 lot line setback.
Mr. Mayor, can I interrupt to ask if the clerk could fill the screen, because we're seeing the sheets to the left, like all the pages, just to make it bigger somehow. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Then moving on to change number 9 on page 8. There was you'll see a few of these changes that are associated with this change throughout this document. But in our code, there was a differentiation between a truck wash, and that would be a commercial truck wash, and a truck and trailer wash. And what we were finding was that was creating too much ambiguity while people were going through this. And And so we decided to just lump them into one single use. And in order to do that, we wanted to update the code definition for truck wash and just made it clear that it was not just the truck itself, but it was also indeed the associated trailer with that. The next change was change 11. That's on page 11, or starts on page 11. And that is essentially to add a crematory or funeral and mortuary facility and separating those two so that it is clear that that they are actually different. Going through that, we realized that there was a difference in the intensity of the use for each of those. So you'll see that funeral home and mortuary facility, they're permitted in more zoning districts than just the crematory. And that's just a compatibility thing with the zoning districts to ensure that they are where we believe that they should be. Moving on to change 12 on page 13. This is a continuation of that truck and trailer wash that we talked about earlier. And what it does is it just removes the truck and trailer wash as a use from code so that we just have truck wash in there. Change 13 is actually moving it is replicating the mobile vending use table that's within the mobile vending section of Title 15, but it is also putting it into the use table itself. And that's just to make sure that it's easy to find and that people don't have to search as much. It's the exact same use table, the exact same zoning districts where it's permitted in this table as well. The next one is change 14 on page 18, or starting on page 18. And what this is doing is it's for each of our processes, it lays out exactly what we are supposed to do as far as public notice, whether it goes to the Planning Commission or City Council, those sort of things. And going through our code, we noticed that there was a discrepancy in this table and a previous section. And in that, it said that the final plat also required mailed notice to individuals within 300 feet of the site. And so we're just updating this table to make sure that it does validate that previous section. The final change that I'm going to go over tonight is adding a definition for funeral home in there. This definition came from planning textbooks, and because we made it a use, we need a definition associated with that, and so it came along with that change as well. All these changes went before Planning Commission on September 26th, and it was recommended for approval with 5 A's and 0 nays and 2 absences. It was advertised on October 1st, and this is the first reading for these changes.
Thank you. We have a question from Councilmember O'Doherty.
Oh, I was wondering about the notices, like right now it's a sign and you're saying, add the timing. So it was in the first change that we discussed. And I was wondering, instead of maybe we consider instead of additional posted notice requirements shall be determined by the city manager's office. It seems like posting on the city's website would be helpful. I just want to throw that out there for consideration, maybe at the next reading. Thank you.
Mr. Shahidi, did you want to address any of that?
Yeah, Mayor. Yeah, I think that that is something that the city is, or the planning department is looking into. I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can notify people, and we're looking into how we can incorporate it into our website. Currently, we just haven't included that as a process in the code yet.
Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. Joseph, give me an idea of the review process. It seems like you're looking at almost everything on the books, kind of a tedious project. And are all of the staff involved in this? It just seems like a very kind of a large undertaking, but I know it's something needs to be done, but it seems like, boy, there's a lot of work there to look at everything that is on the books.
Mr. Shahidi.
The council member Gabriel. So I guess it just depends on the specific process we're talking about. Generally, an application comes in, and according to that application, we have steps outlined within section 15 that we're supposed to take, review times associated with that, and also what staff members are required to look over it, and are notified about these processes. I can't say that there's a specific process for everyone, but I can give a generalizable kind of timeline of how it kind of goes through. Generally, a packet comes in, and we review the packet. We have it, and then we send it off to various departments that are associated with this for comments. Our staff looks through the code during that time and ensures that the project complies with code. And then we wait for the other departments to provide their input. Public Works is part of that process a lot of times. And then it can be anywhere from utilities, franchise utilities like natural gas and internet can provide comments, but also, police department, school districts can provide comments. And so once we get those initial comments in, then we send those comments back to the applicant, and that just allows the applicant to decide, well, not decide, there's certain things that they have to comply with according to code to continue on with the project. And then there's certain recommendations that we have just from our experience that aren't part of code. And then once that process is completed, then it moves on to either going before Planning Commission, and then sometimes comes before you according to whatever process is laid out by the specific application.
I was just curious, for example, when you discovered the tractor trailer car wash situation, how did that come about? Or do you know?
It's not something that I can specifically answer, so I might hand that over to the planning manager.
Mr. Genie.
Yeah, I mean, just like a lot of these, we may get a phone call. We might be looking through code to look up some other section and we see an error. And the tractor trailer one, we had a person ask about, building a commercial tractor trailer wash facility. And as we were reading through it, there was some confusion, like, so can I only wash the trailer part or the tractor part, and so, and so when we notice things like that, what we do is we mark them down. We keep a running list of them. And then, as we see those build up, we try to bring something like this forward for you for consideration. So.
Thanks to both of you.
Mayor, if you don't mind, just on the last question from Member O'Doherty, the only thing I would mention about modifying like the process in terms of notification is this is just one section. We're talking like it would be probably 20 sections of code if we were to like add website notification or something. So just if you were to add that in, it would only be in this one section for this one piece of code, which I don't think is successfully doing the job of what you were maybe talking about or discussing. So I'm just pointing that out, that maybe that should be something future to talk about as we, you know, try to improve notice to the public, which is always a good thing. So.
Thank you, Mr. Tini. I'd like to ask a question on behalf of the city council, if the council member that's waiting will allow me. And I'd like to bring the city manager in for this question. It's my understanding, and it's based on memory, that for several consecutive years, the city council adopted, and it may even have been it also in just this last year and the year prior, but the city council adopted a standing policy goal of continuous code revision and update around these planning and zoning issues and these development related concerns. And it may be at this point that had been included so often that it's simply been institutionalized as part of the planning department's process. But do I recall that correctly, city manager? Can you help me with that, since you've been with us over several councils? But that's my recollection.
Right, Mayor, I think you're accurate. And in deference to our planning manager, I would say that planning manager Taney was with the city before what we call our new development code, but it's actually not that new because it's over a decade old at this point. Derek has been with the city at the time that code was implemented, and that was really a promise to the public that we would implement that development code, and then we would sort of right size it to our community over time through what you said, this kind of continuous assessment and improvement of the code to really make it work for our community. So Derek, you add anything you'd like?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing tonight are just, you know, making sure that our code is, you know, concise and clean and accurate. And, you know, the other times when we're bringing other things forward, it's that, I think, more right sizing our code, trying to make it fit our community, you know, addressing the situations that we deal with day to day. And I think, you know, as a community, it takes a lot of work, but it's the right thing to do, because I think when you let those things go too long, what happens is you start to run into those consistently, and they do cause problems. And there's no reason to cause problems with things like this when you can correct them in a process that we have available. So
it's accurate to say.
Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to add, Mayor, I think too, for you all as elected officials, it's probably important for you to understand that it is the job of your planning manager and your planning department to be mindful of where the code, where there are bottlenecks, issues that, you know, they address in their day-to-day administration of the code. And it is their job, not only directed by you, but just a natural part, I think, of a planner's job, and certainly my expectation of them, that as they see issues, that they will bring them forward for your consideration. They're really the boots on the ground, and they're going to see things long before you may even hear about them. So keep in mind that even absent your direction and your adopted goals, as you said, Mayor, this is a function of planning and something that we will continue to do. The code is always a living and breathing document, as they say, to be a little bit cliche.
So it's very much accurate to say this is an institutionalized policy practice that, although maybe has been outlined as a goal by council at different times, it's something that's ongoing and will continue to be ongoing, because it's a best practice, and it's based on that continuous feedback from the people that work with the city government on planning and development projects. I appreciate the time spent on that, and I appreciate Councilmember Somerville's patience with that follow-up question. I'd like to now recognize Councilmember Somerville.
No problem, Mayor. Thank you. My question goes back to page 5 and the changes to the setbacks. I was just kind of trying to reach back in my memory banks, and I thought that when the council did the modifications to R1, that we put all of those setbacks the same as R2, R2M, and R3. And if I'm looking at the change, the exception allows that to be a 5-foot setback as it sits right now for R1. But to be fair, I don't remember a discussion about having, R2, R2M, and R3 being lot line builds. But could somebody refresh my memory on whether that's accurate or not.
Yep, Mayor and Council, just since Joseph wasn't at those meetings, so member Somerville, so in the multifamily zones, we had gone down to the 5 feet, but because of the footnote, technically, if you read that, it would mean that you could push multifamily buildings right to the property line, which we didn't, like we said, we didn't believe that was the intent of what we were trying to do in the code update. We were just trying to reduce setbacks, not eliminate them. And then in the R1, LR, and RR zoning districts, we had gone to 10 feet, and so we reduced them. Some of those were 25 feet, 15 feet, depending upon the zoning district. So we did reduce them. And it went down to the 10 feet for all 3 of them. So that was where we landed during the council meeting. Is that answering your question? Is that what you wanted confirmation on?
Mayor, if I can. Yeah, I think that gives me that confirmation. So, but we're only removing the exception for R2, R2M, and R3. We're leaving the exception in place for R1. Am I reading that right? It says the change would require minimum 5-foot setbacks in R2, R2M, and R3.
Yes, you are correct in the way that you're reading that. So this footnote under the R1 would remain. Because the only ones that the footnote makes it a 0 lot line is the R2, R2M, and R3.
R3. Okay. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for Mr. Cheney? Go to public comment. I'd like to recognize Mr. Brett Glass. Let Mr. Brett Glass into the meeting for public comment on the item. You have the floor.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'm glad that some of this is being cleared up. I think this might be an opportunity to make a useful and much much requested change. In table 15.06-1, summary of review procedures, it says when something has to be when a change has to be noticed to the public. And you'll notice the very first line that says text amendments. You did one of these earlier this year that people felt they were blindsided by. It says that they have to be published, but not written or that is mailed to the public or posted. You may want to change that, and you may want to look through this table and see if there's anything else that the public deserves to be notified of directly. After all, we don't really have a working press in Laramie anymore, so the only way people will find out if, for example, the zoning rules for the neighborhood are going to be changed would be if they receive some sort of written notice. So please consider that before this gets to third reading. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Council, back to you. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
That motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. Now to item number 15. Councilmember Schuster for introduction and background.
Thank you very much. The title is Resolution 2022-56, rescinding Resolution 2022-02, requiring a virtual meeting attendance and providing a hybrid meeting attendance. I move to approve Resolution 2022-56, rescinding Resolution 2022-02, requiring virtual meeting attendance and providing for hybrid meeting attendance, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Been a motion and a second by Councilmember Gabriel. Councilmember Schuster, back to you.
Thank you. I've been in favor of restoring the meetings. There are people outside right now. They were tapped on the window and everything else. So I said that I would try to get this moved. I talked to the city attorney, I've talked to the city clerk, I've talked to several people, and we thought that probably the only thing that would stand a chance of passing was doing a hybrid meeting. That, making it available for the city council chambers to open, and also making it available for city councilors or attendees, that they could also still come in on the Zoom meeting. So that's why it is called a hybrid, so that we could do both. So it would be a city council member's choice, and it would be an attendee choice if they wanted to come to the meetings or not. And I think that's the kind of the abbreviated version of it. Now we can talk about it.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. Council members, I'm going to depart from the regular method here. I'm going to go to public comment first, and we'll take public comment on this item because this is specifically about a council process. This isn't a policy consideration. So we're going to take public comment on that and listen to that, and then we'll go back to council members. We have Tom Mattamore, who had signed up for, Mr. Tom Mattamore, who had signed up for comment ahead of time. And we'll recognize Mr. Mattamore. You've got the floor.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity. I wish to support this resolution as there is I've seen it, a growing mistrust of city government amongst the population. This was apparent at last week's open house on the growth plan, where it was almost universally announced that they want open meetings. A return to regular order in public at City Hall would go a long way towards restoring confidence in government, and the public feels that new plans and things just appear at the last minute without any public input. A lot of that is the fact that we don't have as Brett said, we don't have much of a newspaper here anymore. And you don't get the news until it's almost too late. The other problem is too many older citizens have major difficulties with Zoom. They just call it cultural or electronic or whatever. And then when I had employees and I tried to get my younger employees involved, they had cell phones. They didn't have computers. And all they wanted to do was listen to music, and they tried to go into the Zoom meetings and it was almost unintelligible for them. They couldn't see anything or hear very well. So I think meeting in public, even if it's a hybrid, is long overdue. We need to start returning to normalcy. And I really would like to see boards and commissions return to this option as well. I know the Planning Commission it's difficult. We have more interface with the public than some of the other commissions. And it's difficult, again, for some people to deal with Zoom and the whole electronic 21st century stuff. I'm 72. It took me a long time to be able to do this. So I empathize. That's all I've got to say. I hope you approve this. And I know we can't do it instantly, but if we could work out a plan to start bringing it back to normalcy, it would be greatly appreciated by myself and I believe a large part of the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Next up, we have Brett Glass. Let's let Mr. Brett Glass in for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Well, as you know, I am one of the candidates to join you on council, and this has been one of the most common complaints that I have heard from the public, that they feel that the council is walled off from them. Now, some of us, I'm a techie, so I feel comfortable on Zoom, but I've been amazed by how many people have told me that they're just not. And eventually we do need to open up. and go back to normal face-to-face meetings. So the question is, when do we do it and how? Well, that scientifically, there's not going to be any good way to tell when we really should, because now that now that people are doing their testing at home, now that the government has really stopped tracking cases, we're never going to know exactly, and people are going to have to make their own assessments of risk. There are going to be some immunocompromised people who are going to have to continue to participate remotely. So this is why a hybrid format is a great idea. But for the rest of us, we are really sort of going to have to, say Geronimo and place our own bets on when that's the when that's the right thing to do. However, ultimately, it is the right thing to do. You can't see me right now, and I really think that's a shame, because there was one Zoom bombing, and that has caused council not to display video of people anymore. I can't show you pictures. I can't gesture to you. This is not a good way to interact, and so yes, I think we should move to a hybrid format and look forward to the day when we can meet in person again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comment? I'd like to recognize Mark Armstrong. Let Mr. Armstrong into the meeting for public comment. You have the floor.
I'm just going to agree with the last two speakers, and it's long past time to open the meeting. It's the public has a right under the Public Records or the Public Meetings Act to have access to these meetings. If you're afraid that the public will not mask up or will not do your wishes, then you can have a hybrid meeting and stay home. But the public has a right, and the city council is the servants of the people, and the people want their rights under the law, under Public Meetings Act, to be reinstated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Other public comments? The screen name TG will recognize screen name TG. Ask you to give your full name for the record, please. You have the
Terrence
floor.
Benson.
You have the floor.
Yeah, my full name Terrence Benson. I'm concerned about any time when government seems to look like they are walling themselves off from the people. I'm not sure what your COVID rates are, and neither are you, because it's impossible, as Mr. Glass said, to actually know, since no one's really testing. I think the reality of it is that sometimes these things start looking like they're a cover for transparency in government. And I think that one of the things that is lost, as Mr. Glass pointed out, is looking at people in the faces. Most of you probably did not campaign on Zoom. Most of you probably went places and talked to people and shook their hands and had conversations and human contact to explain the things that you wanted to do. And I think a computer is a very poor excuse to have those types of discussions. And some of the changes that are going on in Laramie and some of the things that are going through the council need to have actual people looking at other people and communicating in a way where facial expressions and hand gestures and just crowd size let you know that people are frustrated. Some people, or happy with what you're doing for that matter, but some people have difficult times with technology, and some people have a difficult time figuring out how this works. It is frustrating. I can't see anybody but who you want to put on the screen, and it's sometimes difficult to communicate that way. And government, especially at the city, the very local level, should be the best communicators of all government. And right now, you guys are probably, the city of Laramie is probably one of the only cities still holding Zoom city council meetings, because people have moved on. And I think it's time that you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Other public comments? All right, public comment on this item is closed. Council members. I had Councilmember O'Doherty first before we went to public comment, then I'll go to Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I am concerned that we haven't updated the ventilation system in council chambers. I know that was something we tried to get an ARPA grant for back when this all started and we couldn't get it. And last I heard, November is when it's supposed to be updated. I'm really concerned, like I have a choice to come, but our staff doesn't have a choice. And I recall a meeting 2 summers ago where staff and certain members of the public were trapped in a room where people weren't abiding by health recommendations and there was no way out. So I would like to see those things resolved. If staff didn't have to be there, I'd be more comfortable with it, but I don't know how we have a meeting without staff. So we're forcing staff to be subjected to everybody's personal whim about how they want to treat public health. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor. Early on in the pandemic, I think the very beginning, city staff made an effort to improve the chambers by reconfiguring the layout. Most of the public's probably unaware of that effort. I think while well-intentioned, it made that space less functional to use and harder, just to be candid, I think, Mr. Mayor, harder to see the public from where we would all sit. And I know that there was some conversation about modifying or maybe restoring sort of the functionality of this place where council sits. I was hoping for an update on that.
Councilmember Harrington, I asked you to refer to the last communication from city staff with regard to those efforts. And
well, Mr. Mayor, I think maybe not to cut you off, but my interest is the public should, sort of know about where we're at on that. It's not necessarily, I may be asking a question I know an answer to, because I think the public, maybe needs that information as well.
Noted. Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to speak as a nurse and liaison to the Board of Health. And the city and county have worked during this 2.5 years. We've been working with this, with COVID, to incentivize vaccine, to educate the public. And I think as a community, we've done reasonably well. We're below the national average related to vaccines, but we are high for the state of Wyoming. We have 64% with 1 dose, 57% 2, and 29% who have chosen to get boosters. Our community has been in the green or low risk zone since June 21st. So that is 3 months. The weather's been good. We've been outside. We had previous spikes immediately, 2 weeks after graduation, June 1st through 20th. We had an additional spike in July, the 19th through about the 27th. after Jubilee days. So where there's a large gathering, we have experienced spikes where we've gone in to the yellow and red, and then we come right back down to green. So we've done a reasonably good job. Last week, there were 37 reported cases, and Albany County is averaging about 5 cases a day. And this is good news for us. One of the concerns I have are related to long COVID. And long COVID is becoming an increasing health issue that is occurring among individuals who have had serious, mild, and sometimes no symptoms after having a COVID infection. The CDC currently is estimating about 1 in 5 people will develop symptoms of long COVID, sometimes for weeks, months, and some for years. Reuters Business Journal recently published an article expressing concern related to the increased potential for workforce disability and are asking us to really look at that potential impact. So though our community is doing well, I think the bottom line is we don't know quite yet if it's over. We've learned a lot. We've learned how to mitigate it. We've learned some very sensible ways, such as increased ventilation and vaccination, which are 2 key ways that we can prevent serious illness. I would join Councillor O'Doherty in concerns about ventilation and that we are moving toward getting a better ventilation system within chambers that would protect everyone. And so then I would, and then the second thing is they anticipate that there may be an increase once the weather changes and we begin to be inside and more contained. And we'll have a better sense of that in November, December. And so I think some of these decisions may be appropriate toward the end of the year when we do have the ventilation system, the reworking of chambers, and a better sense of where we stand with infection at this point in time. So that's just a comment that I have related to health. And I think just the last thing I want to say, I've received, like the rest of council, a number of letters. And I would like to point out that our meetings have not been closed and they have been open for the entire time. So when we meet and when we have a work session, they are open to the public, and that our participation has increased, I think, because people have the ease of connecting with council. And I've received a number of comments and emails stating that people have been able to attend meetings because of having it online when they would not be able to otherwise come down to chambers due to family, aging issues, disability, etc. So I would support a hybrid move. And thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Councilmember Gabriel.
Well, Mayor, at this time, would it be appropriate to ask the city clerk a question about equipment?
Certainly.
I was just curious. I was talking to a university employee today who went to a hybrid situation for their meetings. and they had to purchase a smart video conference camera, which made things a lot easier for the hybrid meeting situation. It's about anywhere from $900 to $1,100 for this piece of equipment. I was just wondering from the city clerk standpoint, do we have anything similar to that that would make, if this does in fact pass a hybrid meeting, would that equipment be available, or would the city have to purchase something?
Mayor, through you to Council Gabriel. We do have a meeting owl. However, for council, our chambers are set up with cameras to be able to see the council members within chambers. We are in a little bit of a transition right now that just started, but we do have a meeting owl to answer that question, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. So for me, I think back to the work session we had a few months ago that talked about our increased numbers of participation here on Zoom and how that didn't match up with in person. Yes, technology can be a challenge, but at this point where we have as many points of access to this call as possible through Zoom, through phone calls, I'm really curious how driving down to council and a meeting and sitting around waiting us for talk about something instead of making dinner or what have you there is just as convenient as making a phone call and listening in and doing those things at home. I get a lot of these points and some arguments here, but I don't buy the technology is a challenge. It might exclude certain people, but I also feel like that's a choice of theirs, that they don't want to call in or Zoom in any way, just like it's a choice for a person to not drive down to a council meeting. I would rather have more people engaged through a technology like this than otherwise. I have concerns about hybrid stuff. In my waning few days as a university employee, just today I had to give a class where there was talk about using a hybrid system. Nobody was on the hybrid system, so we didn't have to use it because it's just not as effective. They aren't paying as much attention. They're not as engaged and things like this. I know that we have on council one of our members that is one of the leading people in our community around distance education, and I'm curious if she has any thoughts as to what a hybrid meeting would look like as we consider this.
Thank you, Councilmember Schmeckel. That's a perfect segue to call on Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. For those of you who don't know, I've been with the Online and Continuing Ed Division at the University of Wyoming for, I don't know, maybe 13 years. I took a 5-year hiatus from distance education. So overall, roughly 13-ish years. And the research is suggesting, and folks have been researching this obviously for the last couple of years now, that either meetings should be conducted via Zoom, right, or all in the same format like we're doing now, or in person, one or the other. And if you opt to have a hybrid meeting, you need to have the appropriate equipment and possibly a facilitator, because you need to have somebody watching to make sure that questions from council members, questions from the public aren't being missed, because now they're in multiple locations, right? So what we would be asking of our city clerk, potentially a city council member, potentially a new employee, becomes a budgetary issue, right? Because if we need somebody else to help us facilitate this hybrid and to make it as effective as this particular layout is, or that in-person layout is, we may actually need to hire someone to assist with that. Now, I don't know for sure. I don't know if a city clerk, city manager have even considered any of these things, but I think as council right now, I think it's something we really truly need to talk about. And then Councilor Gabriel was hinting at technology. It is, I don't know currently what sort of technology we have in the chambers, and the actual technology is not my area of expertise, but it could mean an investment in something more than just the owl or something that follows the voices. I mean, if we're going to do hybrid, if we opt to do that, we better do it well. I mean, and I don't know the answers to those questions. I don't know if we have the right, if we're going to need help, if we're going to need another person. And I don't know if we have the right equipment. And I think this hybrid idea is truly confusing and frankly not recommended, from my perspective. I mean, from my perspective, with those 13 years of experience, it's either all or nothing. We're either all in chambers or we're all on Zoom. So, and that's what's been the lessons of COVID, frankly, and that's makes for a better learning environment, makes for a better interaction and environment between people and involvement with the community in our case, as opposed to from the educational slant of the ease of learning. So, yeah, I mean, that's really all I've got to say.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Harrington up.
Thank you for the second time, Mr. Mayor. I think beyond sort of like the owl as like an option for a hybrid meeting, I don't know. I think there are other technology issues to work out, maybe specifically how our microphones pick up specifically our audio, don't pick up our neighbor's audio and feedback into the hybrid Zoom world for the council members on Zoom still, and the members of the public and the YouTube stream. All of the, those are the places that we are seeing the more significant involvement in the council. And so I would hate to make that a sort of lower experience. So I think there's a technology question at play, but I think maybe in my mind, the bigger consideration is what this looks like practically for this council as this council, draws to an end in a little over a month. New council members will be elected to this body. I think it would be, maybe beneficial for the council to wait for that body to be seated and make this decision. It is, I mean, that's my opinion. By then we'll have a clearer picture as Councilor Cumby mentioned, we'll have a clearer picture of where we're at with the pandemic at that point, but also we won't have to sort of handle this transition at the sort of the waning days of a council, and potentially be looking at sort of a mix up in how this sort of the leadership of this council sits now. I think there is I don't really have an interest in changing the way we run meetings at sort of the very end of this council, and not because I didn't hear what the public said, but because I just don't know that it's going to make us less efficient in the last 3 months. It's going to make everything considerably slower, far less engaging, and we're just going to be fumbling through a time period like I'll be here 2 more years. So but I think there are other members of the council that have some things that they'd like to work on. We shouldn't hamstring those folks. And so, Mr. Mayor, that is a long way of saying, a very long way. So thank you, council. I think this is a decision for the council that's coming down the line. It will have new members on it. And, I think to the vice mayor's point, it's sort of an all or nothing sort of a situation. And that's a conversation for the council that's going to sort of live with these decisions longer term.
Other discussion. Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Other discussion. I'm going to address a couple of points. we are wastewater monitoring for COVID levels, which is what a lot of communities have transitioned to. We're working with experts in the field, and it gives us a fair indication of what COVID levels are like ahead of time. Is the science behind that? So we do have some idea of what we're doing. I'm not sure about other members of council, although I think the numbers that Councilmember Cumby quoted to us are not as bad as they have been. I don't find them to be particularly encouraging, especially when we realize that people aren't reporting case levels the way they were before. Councilmember Cumby?
Mr. Mayor, I just didn't know about getting into the whole wastewater thing, but the wastewater results have been in the green, and the most recent are in the red. So we have a 20% increase in the presence of the COVID RNA in the wastewater. So there is an increase, and we may see an increase in the community within the next 7 to 10 days.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumby. And that's precisely an example of why we're doing wastewater management, because it helps us to provide a forecast of where we're going to be at. Which leads me to my next point, which is that I don't know, once again, about how the rest of the council feels, but I find myself asking how many times I've heard that COVID is over. I've even recently had to hear it from the President of the United States, who immediately backtracked on it as soon as the experts in the field weighed in. I recall hearing COVID was over in May of 2020. How about the rest of you? I remember that prediction as well. And I also remember the hundreds of thousands of people who subsequently died. I'm also concerned about the long COVID issues that we talked about earlier in this meeting. I don't think we need to go over too much more of that. I think most of us are pretty familiar with that. And I appreciate the points that were made about public attendance and participation in these meetings. By all measures, they've increased. And certainly, we've heard the comments regarding the conduct of public business, and public business does need to be conducted in public meetings, open to the public. And I would hope that members of the public that have made critical remarks, which I don't think are broadly representative of the public at large in Laramie, and I'm just going to go ahead and state that now, nor do I think those who support a return to this meeting are basing that on much more than a small sample of individuals that have prioritized this for their own reasons. But these meetings are being conducted in compliance with public meeting laws. We've had the legal review. Everyone knows that. You've read it, you've received it, you've understood the analysis, and you haven't followed up with questions, or you have, but these meetings are in compliance with the public meeting laws. And we've heard that that commenters may feel that there's some restriction on their public speaking. I don't really understand that. I don't understand, based on the analysis we received, how anyone would come to that conclusion as a member of the council. Certainly, there's adequate and frankly generous public comment options offered to folks. All one needs is a touch tone telephone to join meetings by Zoom. That's the only technological requirement. Perhaps some people don't have a phone. Certainly, there are certainly individuals in this community that don't have the work schedules or a car to attend regular meetings in person. No matter which way we go, we're going to be excluding someone at this point in our council business, and it's an unfortunate reality. We've also seen some idea that there's an infringement upon rights, some various points to that effect in the emails. And again, this wasn't a decision that we've made in a vacuum. We've reviewed everything we can to make sure that we're in compliance with the public meeting laws, and I think we can feel confident that we are. We provide 3 minutes per item for agenda items on the regular agenda, and we provide that speaking time at least twice and usually 3 times. So that's really a total of 10 minutes, nearly 10 minutes of speaking time for any interested member of the public that wants to weigh in on an issue. We provide a public input time for work session topics. There are, of course, other public meetings being conducted in person on a variety of these important issues that the city is examining. And we know that because people have been attending them, and they seem to have been attending them with an eye towards not so much input, but towards tactics to obstruct and disrupt public business. And this council doesn't have any regard for that, nor will they in the future. And I would highly doubt that any future councils would feel any differently. So I think what's relevant here is that we are adhering to the requirements for public meetings. We are monitoring COVID. We are concerned about it. And I particularly want to express that I agree with the judgment of other council members that the next council is going to have some advantages that this council doesn't in determining whether or not they want to go back to an in-person meeting or a hybrid format. One, the equipment delays that we're experiencing right now for some of the upgrades to the chamber that we'd like to see will hopefully be resolved by then. Right now, we continue to deal with delays for air equipment, and we continue to deal with delays with some other changes that have been long planned for the chambers. And we addressed it earlier in the meeting tonight. Equipment delays are a reality that we're dealing with, but the next council may have the advantage of that work being done and not having to worry about that. The other advantage they're going to have is to see whether or not we're in a subsequent wave from a new variant of the ongoing pandemic, which has not ended. And I think it's prudent to have an eye towards perhaps that council being in a better position than this council to make that decision in a number of months. I also agree with the point that this council is rapidly coming to an end. And there's soon to be a different city council seated, and they may have their own take on that, whereas we have been able to conduct business open and publicly and accessibly for 2 years, and that hasn't changed. As far as any other opportunities for the public to participate, I find myself asking when that becomes enough after you review how many public comment opportunities we provide as a council. At what point have we provided enough? Now, we've said that there's certainly 3 minutes per agenda item on every regular agenda, usually up to 3 times. Certainly 3 times as requested. There are public hearings, I think we should probably also point out, which allow for people to once again provide comment. And there are numerous other public meetings where people can communicate with not just the council members, but also with the city staff. I would add that they should do so respectfully. Otherwise, I'm not really certain why we would expect people to continue to provide those opportunities. I just ask, when do members of the public begin to approach an amount of time that becomes a problem for the city to be able to do, or any public agency to do what it needs to do? Should we give everyone 30 minutes to speak on an item, an hour? At what point has the public been adequately given an opportunity to weigh in on issues? I don't really know what else there is to say. So we'll go to the city clerk for a roll call vote on this.
Humby,
No.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
No.
O'Doherty,
No.
Schmeckel,
No.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
No.
Pierce,
No.
Weaver.
No.
That's 2 yeses and 7 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. That motion fails. That takes us now to next item on our agenda, public comments on non-agenda items. Items that did not come before the council this evening, where people would like to make public comment. Public comment is closed. That takes us to item number 17. Any input on item number 17?
Mayor, could I go back to the hybrid meeting situation briefly for boards and commissions? I had a request from the
Not at this time.
board.
Not at this time, Councilmember Gabriel. That might have been something to address during the previous discussion. If you'd like to discuss it offline, I'd be happy to do that with you. Anything for item number 17? Very good. Item number 18, Councilmember Schuster.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Schmeckel. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
It is adjourned. Any opposed? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.